So my name is Anna. I graduated in 2011, I think, and I studied psychology. And right now, I'm actually in my fourth or fifth month in a brand new job. I work for the Air Force Special Warfare in their Human Performance Squadron. So I initially did my psych degree in Denver, and then I went to Springfield College in Massachusetts to study sports psychology, and then stuck around there for my doctorate in counseling psychology to become a licensed psychologist, and went in and got specialty training in clinical health psychology, if anyone has heard of such field before, and then did a whole 360 or 180 turn back to the performance psychology with this new job that I'm doing right now. So I'm teaching mental skills and helping with the performance of the special warfare trainees.
My name is Gretchen, and I graduated in 2007, 007. And my degree when I was at the University of Denver was psychology with an emphasis in cognitive neuroscience. And so what I'm doing now is I've actually been in private practice for about 6 years or so now. And the way that I show up with clients has continued to evolve and change as I have evolved and changed. But the bottom line basis of it is really working on more of a mind-body connection. And I also really bring spiritual and emotional energy into the practice too. So it's been a really interesting journey throughout. And I also help people specifically with trauma and more body-based types of psychotherapy. So that's what I've been doing.
Hi, I'm Melodie. I graduated DU in 2014, and I studied psychology and biology, and I did a minor in business. I am back in Spain, which is where I was born. And here in Spain, it's really hard to work as a psychologist licensed, to call it that way. So I'm right now on my third master's degree. Hopefully after this third master's degree, I can actually work as a clinical psychologist in the public health, which is what we have here. And if not, I'll just start my private practice. But as for now, I'm coaching in a club that I founded in 2007 here in my town, Martorell. And I'm also doing some stuff as a psychologist, but not like clinical psychologist, just more like education, we call it here, is the type of things that you can do with dyslexia and stuff like that. And also like kind of changing a little bit the way kids see fear and how they like fear some things that are like maybe not that scary, but to them after a trauma, they're very scary. So I'm doing that on the side. And hopefully when I finish this master's, I'll get a job in the field that I want, which is working with elders. I did my 4 years of internship for the other 2 masters in various fields, but what I like the most is working with old people and like kind of detecting if they're going to develop any like dementia or any like cognitive disorder due to age early enough that we can actually, if not stop it or delay it much, find the best way for them to live their life.
So I would say that my route is a little bit different than both of yours in that I don't have more of the clinical psychologist role. So my undergrad is cognitive neuroscience, and then I have a master's degree in kinesiology. And so it really has been more the practice of connecting the mind and the body. And it's been kind of nice to not have the licensure component with it so that I can do more transformational coaching and bring in other elements that I think would be harder to bring in with a more psychology degree. And so I just want to say that it's like a little bit different. And in some ways it's, do I show up in the coaching realm or do I show up in the psychology realm? And it seems to be a yes and, because the way that I work with people is so multidimensional and really working on the whole person. So what about for you? Did you have a way you got into psychology, mental health field?
I was interested in psychology, I don't know, as long as I can remember, part of the mind-body connection as well, and also really interested in the sport application of it. I had I could say, a mental block in backward skills myself in gymnastics, and that drove a lot of my interest. But that's why I chose to study psychology in Denver. And over there, we had a sports psychology person, Steve Portenka, that some of you might be familiar with. So I picked Steve's brain quite a bit. We did some research together, and we also worked together in trying to figure out how to improve a little bit of the mental block. And I got really interested in the sports psychology in that way. But like Steve taught me is that if you want to work as a sports psychologist at the highest level, first off, in the United States, you cannot call yourself psychologist unless you're a licensed psychologist. You have to go and get a degree in either counseling or clinical psychology and become licensed, and then obtain that sports psychology training on top of that in order to work with any of the Olympic committees or higher level athletics, because they want you to be able to teach the sports psychology skills plus intervene in psychotherapy kind of a way in case there is a problem. So Steve recommended Springfield College as one of the programs at that point. Now there is more in the United States at least, but at that point it was one of the only ones that combined sports psychology and the clinical aspect of it in one degree. So that's kind of where my interest started.
Yeah, mine definitely, my whole life I've been really interested in transformation, personal development, growth, and I actually started off more wanting to be pre-med in undergrad, and then I realized like that is not for me at all. I'm very empathic. And so anytime I hear stories or things, I can feel it in my own body, and it's just overwhelming to me. So I changed more into psychology, and I did think that I wanted to go the clinical route. And then I ended up going more into coaching. And so I was a college gymnastics coach for some years in there. And that sort of changed my path and my direction, where when I decided to be done with college coaching, I went to India and I studied yoga there, and I started to open up into other ways of healing and other ways of growing and developing as a person. Where for myself personally, I feel like there are some limitations to clinical Western model for really any type of treatment, including medical. And so for me, it's been like, oh, how can I learn this? And how can I learn this? And integrate those things together. So bringing East and West together, bringing mind, body, spirit, and emotions together, and really that combination with it. And what I've enjoyed is that it has been really a process and a path and an unfolding and a transformation for myself, which allows me to hold more space for other people's growth and transformation. I have a little Post-it note on my wall that reminds me consistently that I think I actually wrote when COVID started, and it says, as I unbind myself, I allow others to be unbound. And so really recognizing the ways that through our social norms and our cultural expectations and the intergenerational transmission of psychopathology and parenting and attachment style, how we have become so bound that maybe we don't necessarily connect with our most authentic self. And so really that has been the path for me in this process.
I actually started like you, wanting to be pre-med. Here in Spain, you go to college and you directly do what you want to do. Like you don't get to do the common curriculum and all that, you know. So I wanted to go straight into medicine, but because I got the scholarship for DU and I couldn't do medicine at DU, they told me, okay, you can do biology or psychology. I didn't want to do biology here because it's not something I wanted to do. So I was like, okay, I'll just do psychology. And my first year of psychology, I was like, this is amazing. This is like, I need to do this. So that's why I stayed in psychology. I also did biology because I was like, maybe at some point in my life, I still want to do medicine because the first thing I wanted to do. But after doing the 4 years of psychology and the biology and seeing that I was more fascinated in the brain part of biology, and it makes sense that I would stay in psychology because at the end it's like the brain part. And I actually did neuropsychology, which is basically just focusing on what is happening on the brain and how we can make sure that everything is balanced and we can detect what's going on. So yeah, like I'm in neuropsychology right now. I stayed in psychology. I want to do neuropsychology per se, which is like the most biology thing that you can do related to psychology. And I think what you're saying, Gretchen, is like very interesting. Just to us, being clinical psychologists, it's not just like it means that you can actually work towards the public. It doesn't mean like anything else. But yeah, we have different clinical psychologists that have different ways of treating people. And for me, what I found that goes best with my values and what I think works best is the acceptance and commitment therapy. And that's what I do with basically everything. And yeah, I mean, it's funny to me that we both went into thinking that we were going to be pre-med and then we were like, nah, psychology is better.
Yeah, and Melodie, it's actually cool you said that in neuropsychology you can kind of combine your interest on the brain and the psychology. I don't know if in Spain the field of clinical health psychology is really a thing yet. I know in Finland it isn't, but that's one of the reasons why I was interested in going into that initially was you treat medical illness and symptoms and things that are going in the body with the more kind of a psychology aspects of things like biofeedback and all different aspects on how your mental state and your thoughts and your behavior affects your medical disorders. So that was really cool. And I actually did my second year of fellowship in neurology. It wasn't in, you could call it maybe applied clinical neuropsychology. So I wasn't testing individuals. I got the people who had already been tested by neuropsychologists, like what you will hopefully be one day, but helping them then to adapt and adjust and do the how to live your life based on your limitations part. So it's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, it's super cool. And actually, what we do as neuropsychologists is just we evaluate and we say what they have, and that's it. And then we send them to you to work with them. Like we don't really do that much work. I mean, we can, you know, we can have some follow-ups and stuff, but in the field of neuropsychology, you basically are a neurologist, but with tests that are going to tell you exactly what's going on in the brain and what's creating all the symptoms. But I think it's so awesome that we are, the three of us are doing such different things, but at the same time, it's like all linked because I might be doing something or hopefully wanting to work at some point with something related to psychology, and then but without what other psychologists do, or like what you would do if I were to send you my patient telling you, okay, this patient has whatever, you know, what you would do with them, Anna, and then maybe Gretchen could work with them in another level. I think that's the beauty of psychology to me, is that it's very broad and like it works in many levels and it works in every single setting. It's like, it works for everything. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think
Like I would, I was gonna say that I would get somebody, for example, with a traumatic brain injury and a chronic headache problem. They would go to Melodie to get tested and seeing what exactly their cognitive concerns are. I can do a lot of intervention and helping them to reduce their headache burden with different types of cognitive behavioral therapies and other things, maybe biofeedback. And I'll probably refer them to Gretchen to learn some other mind-body relaxation strategies and alternative ways of turning down that stress system, and maybe yoga if you still teach that. So it's would be a good trio we would have.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I love about this field so much, is that there are so many different options in it. And I think sometimes actually it can be overwhelming for people to find somebody that's a fit for them, because there's so many different ways of approaching something. And yes, I do still have the yoga component. So I was actually one of the first 100 people in the world to be trained in something called trauma center trauma sensitive yoga. So it's a clinical, empirically validated form of treatment for PTSD and complex trauma. So that's been a really cool thing. And one of the things that I've really noticed through the pandemic is that when people were more so isolated, a lot of their stuff came up, right? You're not so busy, and then you're sitting there and you're with yourself, and so your things come up. And I've noticed a really huge uptick in people wanting the types of services that I've offered, whereas before it was almost like too new, and there weren't people aware of embodiment practices, of body-centered trauma approaches to healing. And what I have been taught and trained through different programs, but also through my experience, is how important it is to bring the body into treatment, how our body-brain unit remembers every single thing that's ever happened to us, and how most people have unprocessed or unresolved, you can call them traumas, or you can call them whatever you'd like, in their body that then can create, mental blocks in gymnastics, or different fears or anxieties, or staying in patterns and habits that no longer feel like they serve them, but it's almost like they don't feel like they have the ability to change it. And to just try to change your thoughts is so exhausting when your brain and body is constantly sending you signals to do something else. So it's just a different approach that can be a really great combination with somebody that does more of the psychology mental training. I've worked in combination with psychologists before too, so it's more like the top down and the bottom up approach. But it's been really interesting to witness how people are ready to shift in a whole new way through the pandemic, and how there is more people reading things like The Body Keeps the Score, or understanding that there is TCTSY out there, more somatic, sound, breath types of ways of working.
I was gonna say, with the pandemic, I have seen what you say, like a lot of people that maybe were, to me, they were really on the edge, because it's been traumatic, but not that traumatic, like to give an onset, like a sudden onset. So like they were probably approaching it anyway, and maybe instead of like taking the 3 months that we were confined, that they took to become their, not become, like start their onset, they would have taken 2 or 3 years. But what I've seen though, and what to me is more worrisome, is studies that they have done, at least here in Spain. I'm sure they've done in the US. I've seen mostly done in Europe, with kids that have been in quarantine and that are expected to have more disorders when they reach adolescence or when they are adults than are expected from people that were not confined during their childhood. And that to me is really, it's worrisome, but it's also really weird, because what I saw in my town, at least, and in my country, is that kids were okay with this. Like they were not they were not the ones experiencing all the stress, and they were not, you know, the adults, the parents were like, they were going crazy. They were like, I cannot do this. I cannot stay home. I have 3 kids. Like, they're going up and down. They're doing rest. And old people that couldn't go on their walks and couldn't socialize, and now they were declining faster. And the kids were just like having their time. You know, they're like, oh, I cannot go out. Why can I not go out? I want to go out. No, you can't. Okay, then I'll play with whatever, you know. But those are the kids are the ones that are gonna, according to what I've seen, the studies are gonna suffer when they, like, you know, in some years from this. And to me, it's I don't know. To me, it's weird to see that, seeing that they were fine, but also it gives me some, like, I like to be a psychologist, right? I like what I've done, and I like what I do, and I like what I'm gonna do with my life. But when I see things like this, I see how important it is to have psychologists around, and especially ones that do different things, because as you said, people get overwhelmed because not everybody works with everybody, and like, I might get a patient and I cannot work well with them for whatever reason, because we're all humans, and at the end you need some connection. And then they go with Anna and they're like, fine. And then somebody goes to you, Gretchen, and they're like, no, I can do this. And they come to me and they're fine. But I think that is also a blessing, you know, because any person that needs help from a psychologist maybe has to look for different ones, but at the end will get the help that they need. And at the end, if they search enough, they'll get, you know, they'll become healthier, and they'll get the better, and they'll get, you know, the benefits from this. I think that's also really cool of being a psychologist. It's really rewarding in that sense.
Yes, for sure. I have actually probably out of everyone seen the least impact of the COVID in my current work. Obviously, with my past job in the hospital, I had to do telehealth, and I absolutely hated it. I really need to be out there with the people. It's just wasn't good for me. But now in my current job, my students are very confined. They are actually not even allowed to leave the training annex that we are in. So it's been a little bit different. We're kind of like our own secluded world within the bigger bigger system. So, but
yeah, in the work that I do, Melodie, it's really interesting what you're saying with children, because a lot of the memories that we store in our brain and our body are actually from our childhood, right? And they become these implicit, unconscious experiences that we may have appeared very resilient in the time, but it changes the way our brain structure, and therefore our body sensations and emotions come forth. And so I do think it'll be something to be really aware of and really compassionate towards, I mean, ourselves and others as we navigate this, hopefully as a more collective.
and I think it would be cool to talk about, since we're giving an alumni update on kind of how do you tie your student athlete experience and what you learn in Denver into kind of your career right now. What are some of the things, and in the media we have heard all kinds of negative things about gymnastics in the recent years. What are some of the things that gymnastics, especially as a student athlete, gave to you guys in helping you get to where you're at right now in life?
Yeah, to me, being a student athlete has helped me work as a team at all. Work as a team a lot, because before I went to the US and I went to Denver and I went to be a student athlete, I had been an elite gymnast my whole life, and you're there for you. You know, you do gymnastics and you maybe compete as a team, but you need to do your job, and that's it, you know. And I think that being in a team, as it was in my years at DU, has helped me understand that yes, I can do things myself. Obviously, I'm independent, I'm self-sufficient, but things are better and often easier if you ask for help and if you have other people around you that can help you reach those answers that you don't know right away. And that has been tremendously like so good for me, because in psychology, at least here, you find a pathway and you follow that pathway, and that's what you do, you know, like neuropsychologist. But I need the help of other people, because at the end, we're humans, we're very complex, and there's not one answer to what's going on in somebody's life or somebody's brain or some behavior. And being able to actually reach to my peers from my first master's, and then talk to them about what I've learned in the second master's, and like put some things in common, and then maybe getting a patient and being able to ask my classmates, hey, what do you think is going on, or what will you do? Will you administer this test or this other? That's something I've learned as a student athlete, and I don't think I would have learned it, at least not that clearly, if I hadn't gone to the U and I had been a student athlete there.
Yeah, in my experience too, it was such a transition to go from club gymnastics to college gymnastics. And I actually had the benefit of being part of 2 different universities. So my freshman year, I actually went to Utah State University, and then I transferred into DU my sophomore year. And I think that helped me to really appreciate all the resources that were available at DU, and to be able to have, you know, 2 experiences to compare and contrast. And I think gymnastics in general has been a really big teacher in learning how to fall literally on your face in front of people and get back up, and to put yourself out there and try new things. I know for me anyways, in club gymnastics, my coaches would say, well, why don't you try this? And I would just try it. And to have the, I guess, inner resources to be able to do something completely new and completely different, I think has helped be able to allow me to do that now as well, whether it's starting a new college gymnastics program or starting a different way of working people. I think it's like a different level of experience in having done that before. And definitely loved competing for a team more so than competing individually. So that was a really, really cool part of the experience. And feeling that like there's people there that want to help foster all the parts of you was a really impactful experience for me too, especially at DU.
Yeah, I would agree with both of you. And I think maybe from Mel's experience of learning to rely on other people and ask for help, coming from maybe it's the European in us on trying to do it all on your own and figure it out. But I would say freshman year in college was the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. Going to another country and needing to not only learn a new language to communicate with other people, but to excel in pretty rigorous academic institution while training with the team. And I was also at that point supposed to be training to prepare for the Beijing Olympics. So that was a lot to take on all at once. And then I got hurt, and it was a whole cluster of mental and physical mess for the following year and a half. And knowing how I got through that, not just survived, but actually ended up making the best out of what I had left in gymnastics and also with academics, is like now when I'm in those situations, which tend to happen quite often, and maybe I have a tendency to do that. Like with this new job, I trained for 5 years to be a specialist for board certification in specific career field within psychology. And then I took a job in completely entirely different field that I had no experience in. And the only way I was able to get by that massive imposter syndrome in there was like, I survived freshman year in college. I remind myself of that. This is nothing compared to that. Even I'm learning again brand new culture and language and a skill set, done a million times.
A true pioneer.
Yeah. And then figuring out in Denver that, hey, I don't need to do it by myself. Like there was, Steve, and then all of the academic support that I got. I went and took my every single paper for my entire 4 years in DU to the writing center. And that's maybe why currently I am published in English because I learned those skills in there. So
I love hearing about everybody's journey and how DU has been a springboard for all of us and helped us with where we're at today. Does anybody want to share what some of their favorite memories were from being part of the DU gymnastics team?
well,
I can go.
Okay, well, I was gonna say, to piggyback from what we just talked about in kind of the asking for help, my favorite memories have absolutely nothing to do with gymnastics from Denver. It's just kind of those times where, like, I realized that there were other people on my team, that I wasn't alone. Like, for example, my parents would never be able to come to competitions and stuff, and every parent had their signs and goodie bags and stuff for the meets and everything. There was always somebody who did that for me. I didn't ask for it. I didn't expect it. Usually it was, Taylor's parents kind of have become my American set of parents. Or like when I hurt my knee and the team traveled for a weekend and I had to stay home by myself for the first time when they went to compete, like Kelly and Ellen got me this fuzzy blanket and a new book so that I would have something to do over the weekend while I was by myself. And, all those summers training with Carl. And when Jay walked me onto the floor in senior night, when the person who was supposed to do that didn't show up, those were all the kind of memories that I have that I think are some of the best memories for me.
For me, I've actually been thinking about this lately because I've been listening to a bunch of songs that I would listen when I was a sophomore, and I cannot pick one thing, or like not even like a few. In the 4 years that I was there were so many good things that happened, and even the kind of bad things that happened are funny now. A time that you didn't have to worry about anything else and study, and go to practice, and then you were just discovering who you were and like growing up and finding all these amazing people around. And I don't have any memory that I can share because every time I think of one, 10 more come to my mind, and I think that those 10 are better. And then when I try to explain one of those 10, then another 10 come to me. I do cherish every single moment that I spend with my team. I do love every moment that I spend with Paige and Mariah, which were my best friends when I was there. And I look back on all these times that I was learning something, like some not gymnastics, honestly, like some life skill brought to me by the master Carl. Or when Melissa would be my mom, because I didn't have my mom there. Those are moments that they're like so awesome, and I just cannot share one. They were like really good 4 years of my life being there.
And I agree with you that the things that at the moment were like bad, or there was some, oh my gosh, or some drama involved, you look back on it and laugh about it later, and how it was just, I don't know, so funny, and we make it so big at the time. And I too, I don't have a specific memory or experience. I could say in my 3 years there, it really felt like there was this underlying tone of trying to set a new foundation and create more teamwork and camaraderie than there had been before. And so I loved having our meetings. We had Celine before Steve Portenga. So we had meetings with Celine, and then later it was with Dr. Steve Portenga. So I really enjoyed and appreciated those. Andre Martin came in, and that was really helpful for our team. And not so much the gymnastics piece of things, but the feeling that I had my senior year when we were in Magnus and we made it to nationals for the first time the team had in a while. I don't remember the amount of years now. And just the feeling of togetherness and celebration, and felt like such a cool way to end at this more of a peak, and like what the work that we put in mattered, and we had some results with it. And it, again, not results gymnastics wise, however you want to say it, but more so the feeling that I think we all had and we all shared together, standing in the back hallway waiting, and yeah, those moments of traveling together, those moments of being together and growing and learning and being there for other people, maybe experiencing receiving and having other people be there for you, was a really, really beautiful experience. And really appreciated the coaches and how much they put in, Julie, how much she put in, how much everybody that was a part of the program felt really a part of the program.
Well, do you guys, I don't know how COVID is going in the US. Like, I'm not familiar with how it's going, but I think it would be nice if we talked about a little bit how it has impacted our work or what we do, and if we've seen if there's been a rise in the people that seek for mental or psychological help. I don't know if you guys have seen any changes. I can talk about the ones in Spain, but I think you guys should start with this. Like Anna or Gretchen.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, at my current job, haven't been a whole lot of changes. Obviously, we have had to do things a little bit different with the guidelines, but and sometimes I see students who have more difficulty because they might have been pulled from training because of some COVID-like symptoms. And even if they were tested negative, the time from them being pulled out of training and getting the clearance was too much time that they couldn't go back to training. They missed too much and they had to wait and start over the whole thing that they had just started. So there's been quite a bit of increased stress in that regard that I have seen in my current population. But I know overall for mental health services in the US, there has been a big rise. Like I'm no longer looking for employment, but I still keep getting offers or interest from mental health different organizations on looking for more clinicians, especially now to do telehealth through LinkedIn or other kind of a platform like that. So I know there's a lot of need.
Yeah, I transitioned from working one-to-one with people in an office space. Also, I would lead different group events. I led some different sacred travel. So travel stopped, and in March, I actually had a trip planned to Sedona, so I had to end up canceling that one. And I personally decided to transition everything to more remotely. So I haven't been doing as many groups. I do have a trauma center, trauma sensitive yoga group going right now. So I still do some of those, but other times I would do cacao ceremonies or have these beautiful singing bowls. And so we would do sound baths and things like that. And I haven't brought that back into practice yet, which actually feels okay and appropriate for me in the practice that I'm doing, where it seems like the population that I work with, which is really different age ranges, it seems like there is more of a desire to do deep inner work. And then once that deep inner work has been done, then I find people are searching, like, who are my people now? Because who their people were, who their groups were before, I think has really changed and transitioned as they have grown and transitioned themselves, and then looking where to plug back in. And I would say the people that I have worked with have deeply been impacted by the experience, and in various ways. You know, some people are parents and trying to juggle working from home and also parenting. Other people that are in middle school or high school that are very extroverted, that had a really, really hard time with the isolation. And other people, it's been things like different movements that we've had, really talking about racism and inner racism that has, they're ready to heal. And so to me, when I think about the pandemic and COVID, it's not just the medical piece of things, but it's all the ways that our planet has been shifting and all the things that have come up. And I think it's been a really awe-inspiring for me to witness the depth of transformation that people have really gone into and gone through for themselves. And my hope is that it becomes a new norm to talk to somebody, to work with somebody, to reach out for support, where I know in the United States, at least, it's really a culture, has been a culture anyways, of competition and trying to view yourself like against somebody else. And, you know, the whole self-esteem movement where you have to have a comparison in order to feel good about yourself, instead of the self-compassion where you're part of common humanity. And so I think with that, yeah, I just think that it's really important work, and that we all can use help and assistance in different ways, and that there is hopefully less and less social stigma around it, and more people are willing to just have support, you know, support in your life, whether it's through your friends and doing, you know, online get-togethers, but just to have more support, more collaboration, and coming together as groups and coming together as communities.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think as to the transformation you were talking about, there's something I've seen, and this is just from me being a coach at the club that I'm working at. What I've seen is people are less patient in general with like things that are not things that they think are good for them, you know. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think the more communication there is, and the more people are able to speak up, you know, always in a healthy way, and with good words and you know, good behavior and stuff. I think that helps everybody. And yeah, what I've seen is that they're less patient. Like they don't take in as much stuff they would take in before, you know. And that's just from the club. I do have seen a rise in the need for mental health, but not necessarily a rise in the amount of people that seek mental health. I do see that more and more people are in need of somebody, an outsider, you know, because it's not the same. Like as a friend, you can help in some ways, but it's not the same as somebody that's completely objective, that sees, well, not completely objective, but you guys understand me, that sees your life and your problems and the way that you are going through your problems, and from the outside, you know. And I do think that we have a sentence, we have a phrase here in Spain that we say, pon un psicólogo en tu vida, which means put a psychologist in your life, for life, you know, like just put a psychologist in your life, just have a psychologist that you can go to at any moment. Like it doesn't need to be a big deal. If you're stressed or if you're not knowing how to deal with something, or you're feeling overwhelmed, you might just need 3 sessions, but those 3 sessions are gonna help you be a healthier human being and be hopefully happier. So yeah, I've seen lack of patience, rise in people that probably would need to go to a mental health professional, but not necessarily people seeking for mental health. And it's because, at least here, but what you said, there's a stigma about psychologists, and you only go to a psychologist if you're really bad, or you're crazy, or you're having a really big problem. And this is something that I'm fighting against, or we are all fighting against. But I think it's important that we keep bringing this message, that psychologists are good for everything, and we're many different ones, and we can help with basically anything.
Yeah, that's very true. I hope the stigma has been a little bit reduced over this COVID thing too, and people, especially the younger generations, feeling more comfortable reaching out now when you can even have a text message therapist in the United States, and we do all this telehealth stuff. And with the national emergency, a lot of the typical rules of engagement are out the window. Eventually, they'll probably be coming back, but maybe not to the degree that they were before. Like now we can do telehealth across state lines, no problem. Previously, I couldn't have done that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is wonderful about DU and the experience there is I think it does normalize working with other types of practitioners and psychologists, and that it's just something that you could do and a resource that you can have. And like you said, Melodie, you don't have to go to them all the time, but somebody that can be a touchstone for you, or when you feel like, hey, yeah, that'd be really nice, you can reach out to them and have their services. So I think that's one of the things that has been a real benefit for me through my DU experience. Even though my mom is a psychologist, it still is different to experience going to somebody yourself and to have it be normalized where, okay, everybody that comes on the team, at least when I was there, you were required to, or encouraged, I'm not sure the exact languaging, to work with somebody, right?
Yeah, and I wonder now if we're gonna start wrapping up a little bit to see if we could end with like some advice each one of us would want to give to the DU student athletes. And that's the dog, so you guys start.
Well, I'd say my biggest thing is gymnastics is not the end all be all. It's not the end. It's been a big probably part of your life, but it doesn't mean that it defines you. And so maybe going below the surface to what the experiences have taught you, and not so much just the identification with being a student athlete or identification with being a gymnast, and that you're surrounded by resources right now, and to use those resources to springboard you into whatever is next. And you don't have to know what's next. And what's next might not be next for the long term for you, but to allow it to be a process and allow it to be a journey. And as you're there at DU, potentially to have it be a space and a time to know who you are in your most real sense, and not necessarily how other people expect you to show up, but how you want to show up and what you connect with, and being able to find your truest path while you have that support around you. So use the resources as much as you can.
Well, the advice that I would give the student athletes at DU, it's that there's time for everything. There's a time for everything. And the best thing to me that you can do as a student athlete is to know what your priorities are, and what your team priorities are, and what is expected from you, and what you can do when the things that you want to do when you can do them, because you really can do anything. You have all the resources, as you say, Gretchen, and the season is like this preseason, season, postseason, the whole year is really long. So you can really do everything that you want to do. Maybe not everything at the same time, and that's okay. So make sure you know what your priorities are, and don't get so caught up in the things that you are not able to do. And I'm just saying this because I was always very upset that I couldn't take certain classes because of the schedule with gymnastics, but I could take them my senior year, so that everything was fine. So don't worry about it, and listen to Melissa. Melissa knows best.
Yeah, and my advice would be probably even a little bit more academic oriented in like most of you probably know, but DU is a school that is not the way some other schools are, and having had the experience of going to different institutions as well, many people might take for granted on what there is to offer, but I would take the advantage of all of the student athlete academic support services and the writing center, like I said, but even your professors and the the grad assistants in the classes. Like what I learned is like you don't know what you can get if you don't ask, and I figured that out pretty quickly, so I started asking, and the amount of help and extra support and extra training and information I got was amazing. And I don't think you would be able to get that everywhere. And also you won't get it there either if you don't reach out for it. So that would be my biggest advice. And some of the professors are not just professors, they are leading experts in their fields. And if you miss the opportunity right now to talk with them and pick their brain, you may never get that opportunity again. So that would be my advice.